Good morning. It is March 15th. It's a beautiful sunny day. I am not on the AT. I'm standing in front of the Hoover Mason Trestle, which is an old elevated rail track at the Bethlehem Steel that they turned into a museum. And I've been wanting to show this to you. The last time I came over here, it was closed for, I don't know, bad weather. And it is really cool. I love the Bethlehem Steel. I love that they made this into a walking museum. They have a website. You can actually listen to audio as you walk along the trestle to hear the history of the Bethlehem Steel. So yeah, let's go. Right, so there's two ways you can get up to the trestle. There's a staircase, and there's also an elevator. The trestle is also attached to a visitor center if you want to learn more about the Bethlehem Steel, and I think Bethlehem in general. And they sell souvenirs and stuff. So the story of the Bethlehem Steel begins in the 1840s when the Lehigh Canal and the coal it carried triggered the American Industrial Revolution in the Lehigh Valley. The Lehigh Valley needed a railroad, and in order to have a railroad, it needed iron rails, and that prompted Robert Sayer of Lehigh Valley Railroad to form the Bethlehem Iron Company in 1860. And they started making steel and steel rails in the 1870s, and then expanded into forging armor plate and guns for the U.S. Navy in the 1880s. And it went through shareholders and owners, and in 1904 it was renamed the Bethlehem Steel Corporation. So as you walk along the trestle, there are numbered stations that correspond to the hoovermason.com website that tell the story of steel in the Lehigh Valley and how it was made, how long it was made, and how they did it. So the structure of the trestle, the Hoover Mason Trestle, was an elevated rail line built to transport raw materials to the blast furnaces. And these monsters are the blast furnaces. And the trestle was operated from 1907 to 1995 using trolley cars to bring raw materials. So the trolley cars would bring the ingredients to the blast furnace, and the ingredients consisted of iron ore, coke, which is a high carbon fuel obtained from processing coal, and limestone, a mineral that acts as a flux and captures impurities of iron. And then they would load the furnace into a car down there somewhere, and then this is like an inclined elevator that would bring the car up to the very top and dump it into the furnace, and then they would get a blast of heat that reached 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which would then send hot gases into the air and purify the ingredients. Where did all the workers come from? Lots and lots of immigration. Lots of people immigrated here in the 1880s through the 20s, and they came from all over Europe and Mexico and Puerto Rico, and they settled in the valley and found jobs here at the Bethlehem Steel. So the blast furnace turned the iron ore into metallic pig iron, and that would eventually be turned and processed into steel. And the blast furnace basically heated the materials and removed impurities, and then when the whole process was finished, it would lead to molten iron. And these furnaces were capable of producing 800 to 3,300 tons of iron a day. As you might imagine, the work here was grueling. People often worked 6 or 7 days a week in long, exhausting shifts. Accidents were common, and between 1905 and 1941 alone, 500 men died on the job here. And so labor unions began to organize and fight for fair wages and better hours and safety measures. And Charles Schwab was a hard man to negotiate with. He barely budged on concessions, but eventually they won their battle, and the workday was decreased to 8 hours, and conditions and safety measures improved. But there was a lot of violence involved in the strike. In the strikes, there were 2 major strikes that occurred to create safer working environments. This is South Bethlehem, and basically this entire part of the city is made up of folks who lived and worked here at the Bethlehem Steel, and yeah, generations of people on this side of town worked here at the Bethlehem Steel. Okay, right in front of us is the blower house, and this is where giant gas-powered engines pumped pressurized air into the blast furnaces. Every ton of iron takes about 200,000 cubic feet of air to produce, and the air was pushed through pipes that went into the blast furnaces. This is the facility that created the Bethlehem beam, which is an I-beam in skyscrapers, bridges, tunnels, and the steel from here was also used for nuclear and aerospace industries. There is steel from the Bethlehem Steel in the Golden Gate Bridge, and in turrets, guns, and armor for the USS Missouri, and in the Chrysler Building in New York City. So the Bethlehem beam made it possible to build taller, stronger, and cheaper buildings. And I guess it comes in a variety of shapes. These are the old trolley cars that would bring all of the ingredients to the blast furnaces. The Bethlehem Steel shut down in 1998, and it definitely changed the whole environment of the Lehigh Valley. If you're a Billy Joel fan and you like his song about Allentown, living here in Allentown, he's really talking about the Bethlehem Steel. The long building in front of us is the machine shop, and during World War II, there were a record number of over 30,000 women who worked here, which I think is super cool. Here's a photo of the plant from 1896, and here's a photo of the plant from 2012 after it was repurposed into the museum, and there's events and things that take place here. Music Fest takes place here. There's a concert venue, there's a casino, and there's an outlet mall. I'm so thankful they didn't tear this down and just erase the history. So the old building to the left of the new construction is the high house, where they would heat steel to make different types of steel products. One last glimpse. And now I'll tell you a couple of personal stories to explain how important this industry was to my own family. I don't know a lot of my family history. I can only go back as far as grandparents. Kind of sort of know great-grandparents' names and things like that from my mother's side of the family, but my grandfather on my mom's side worked his entire life here at the Bethlehem Steel. He started in some portion of the plant and was one of the statistics of persons injured at the plant, and by the grace of God survived the injury. Something fell from above him and literally penetrated his skull and went into his brain. And my mom tells me that she was really, really tiny when it happened. Like, she might have been under the age of 5. And they did surgery on him, removed part of his skull and replaced it with a steel plate, and yeah, survived. And after the accident, instead of returning to the plant, he was moved into like the business offices, doing some other job on the administrative business side of things. And then my mother worked here at the steel, I think from the age of like 18, maybe 20, to the age of 25 when I was born. And then her career here was done. And she did tell me her job description. My mom is 83 and she can remember the names of every single person that she worked with here at the Bethlehem Steel, which I think is amazing. And then, yeah, I've had other extended family members that have worked here in some capacity, and it just was a huge integral part of the Lehigh Valley. The last interesting story I have about the steel is that when I cross-trained to work in the operating room. It was 1993, and I actually was in a surgery. I was the circulating nurse in a surgery that we performed on one of the last injuries that happened here at the steel. It was after 1995. I want to say it was between 1995 and 1998 when they shut it down permanently. And this guy had his foot got run over by one of the trolley cars and crushed his foot. And I can't remember if we were able to save his foot or if he lost his foot, but so yeah, I took part in that. Right, okay, that's the tour of the Bethlehem Steel. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really thankful that we finally have some nice weather to take the tour. And as you can see, the 6 inches of snow that fell over the weekend are basically already gone. And it's only Tuesday. Spring in Pennsylvania. Thanks for watching. See you next time.